My name is Dr. Angel Acosta. As Monique said, I'm the director of the fellowship program. The fellowship program has been in place for about a year and a half now. We have 11 wonderful fellows who have embarked on this journey with us to launch the inaugural. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? The fellowship experience was launched in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. And the goal of the fellowship was to create a container for the next generation of contemplative scholars, practitioners, healers, and social scientists. The reason why that's significant for you, I want you to all leave today just knowing this specific piece. Take a moment just to reflect and name maybe one or two people in your heart who in the public field, the public sphere, have taught you something about mindfulness, about contemplative practice. Just think about that. I'm assuming that in our collective imagination, the names like maybe John Kabat-Zinn, maybe Rev. Angel Kyoto William, maybe Tara Brach, and so many others who have wonderfully blessed us. Sharon Salzberg, who blessed us with so much insight and wisdom. So just like a bow to them. And one of the things to acknowledge is that there's somewhat of a gap. There's so much of a gap, a generational gap between those luminaries and scholars and practitioners who are in the field, blessing us with that wisdom, and the next generation that's coming. So the fellowship was an intentional way to support with the incoming generation of the future contemplative leaders in the field. So today we are honored to be in the presence of our fellows. I will be here with you all. Many of you might know I have a eight-month-old son who thinks he's 8 years old. So I may be off screen tending to him, but I'm gonna be a part of the experience with you all. And just to also presence that our hearts are indeed a little tender in light of what's happening in Ukraine. And also that our hearts are tender in light of what we're all carrying. I know for a fact that each one of you is holding on to so much. And I just want to acknowledge you. I want to begin by also inviting you to set your gallery view. If you go to the top right and view and put gallery, just take a moment just to see who's here. Just to gently glance at who's here, the images, the videos, the names. I see you, Adam from London, Nina, Nadi, Claudia, Meredith, Jocelyn, Trent, Virginia. And I'll close by saying that there are definitely many paradigms that are afoot. Obviously, the pandemic shifted so much in our physical lives, as well as our emotional lives. And in various fields that touch on the Garrison Institute's mission and the fellowship's focus, there have been some disruptions. I'll just say that over the last 30, 40 years, in terms of our perspective and understanding of intelligence, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about IQ. We've learned a lot about the many other forms of intelligence that we have: musical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, social, emotional intelligence. Thank you, Howard Gardner. Thank you, Daniel Goleman. Thank you, those scholars who gave us a language with which to understand our intelligence in broader ways. Because we know if it were up to me and my IQ, it would probably be on the lower part But I know something to my heart that has a deeper intelligence. I feel so smart here. Here, I don't know, but I feel so smart here. And there are other parts of us that allow us to express the full range of our sense-making capacities. So what I want to say is that this notion of relational sense-making is a profound contribution to the lineage of understanding different forms of intelligence and different forms of making sense of the world through our relationships. And it's something that I think we've done as a species for a very long time, is to come together as a community and make sense of what's happening for me as an individual, for us as a collective. So I welcome you all to tonight's forum, led by our wonderful fellows, and I can't wait for you to experience the conversation, the sound bath. Thank you so much. I want to introduce Jennifer, who will be moving us along.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Monique and Fru, for guiding our Zoom ship through the Zoomverse and making sure all the technology is working for us and with us. I'm feeling a little bit like both like ee and like ooh and excited and anticipatory about our time together. As Angel mentioned, this is an invitation into relational sense making, as we are simultaneously discovering what relational sense making is. And that is what we as a fellowship have been doing for the past 15, 16 months. And one of the things that we're learning is that in relational sense making, how we be together is as important as what we do together. And so the first invitation is for us to be, and to be exactly as we are in this moment. So the invitation for you throughout the next hour and 45 minutes is to take care of you, to be with wherever, whatever is alive for you, is present for you. If that means keeping the camera on or turning it off or getting up and moving around or lying down, whatever you need. As Angel mentioned, he's tending to his baby. How we be together is as important, if not more important, than what we do together. So that's the first invitation. The second invitation is to, or what we're learning, and we were talking about this, some of the fellows and I earlier today, is the place for spontaneity, the space for spontaneity within this relational sense-making paradigm. And I wrote this down because Nicole said this so beautifully, and I wanted to, Nicole's one of our fellows and you'll meet her soon. So can we be open to whatever arises in the space? And having that space for spontaneity, for that openness to whatever's arising within us and within the group, to hearing different perspectives, and holding each of our hearts, our minds, our souls with a tenderness and an openness and a curiosity. And then the last invitation, I think, for now is to offer your gifts. Because another thing that we've learned in our year and change together is that when we be together and we create the space for spontaneity and we bring our gifts without expectation of what the result will be, that there's a certain sort of magic that happens. And our invitation in this whole offering is that we are inviting you into our fellowship experience. And so what we'll do is after a few more words from me, fellow Andrew Villamil is going to offer us a sound bath as a meditation space for us to be and to sort of reset our nervous systems a little bit after the day, whatever time of day it is for you, whatever place you are in the timeline. And then we're going to bring you in and ask you to share in the chat a little bit of what's present and alive for you right now. And then we're going to spotlight the fellows and invite the fellows to share what's present and alive for them. And so we're sort of bringing in all these threads of experience of what's present, what's alive right now in this moment. And then we'll, have the opportunity perhaps for some breakout rooms to kind of dive deeper. And then we'll come back together and share what we've learned and what's emerging. And we'll kind of, do this relational sense making thing, and we'll learn, and we'll see what happens. And so that's sort of, I don't know where this is going to go. That's my little, anticipation. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how it's going to end. I know that we will close at the 2-hour mark. Nicole Chase is going to offer us some gentle movement towards the end to allow us to ground ourselves back in our bodies as we prepare to transition. So that's the general agenda, timeline flow for the time. And so that's by way of welcome. And I would love to invite you to welcome yourselves. If you want to type your name in the chat and where you're zooming from. If you want to share the names of the indigenous people who have stewarded the land in the chat, you can share that. We bear witness to one another in this moment. And as we do this, I'm going to offer a prayer. And I'll type the words in the chat. It's an English interpretation of a Hebrew prayer. And Rose Silver is the composer of this melody and prayer. And so I offered the words in the chat, and I'm going to chant it several times. So if you feel moved to chant along with me in your own space, please feel free. Open my eyes to truth. Open my hands to give freely. Open my lips to good words, to pure words. Open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth. Open my hands to give freely. Open my lips to good words, to pure words. Open my heart to love. Open our eyes to truth. Open our hands to give freely. Open our lips to good words, to pure words. Open our hearts to love. Open our eyes to truth. Open our hands to give freely. Open our lips to good words, to pure words. Open our hearts to love. Open our hearts to love. Open our hearts to love. And with open or closed eyes, with open hands and open hearts, invite you to take in the sounds of Andrew and the sound bowls, and allow your imagination to take you anywhere you want to go. Give yourself a moment to notice the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are present. So much of our experience is beyond language. And often there's a rush to put language around the experience. We'll give the experience a chance to be, and then we will slowly feel our way into the words. So if there are words or phrases that describe what's present for you right now that you feel moved to enter in the chat, we invite you to share. What's alive in your heart? Mm. Mm. In these words, we begin to build our tapestry. Nourished, grateful, calm, peace for the first time in days, tenderness, uplifted by sound, sight, connection, the threshold to rest, hopefulness, stillness, space for grace, fountain of love. I don't know, impatient. We are all of these and more. And a gravity magnet held fast to earth. As feel free to continue to engage in the chat, and as you do, I'm going to invite Fru and Monique to spotlight our fellows: Nicole, Barnaby, Shelley, Jackie, Andrew, and Casey. So, noticing who's coming on. Welcome. And I think Andrew's going to be joining from his other device. So if you can spotlight the other Andrew, I think that might get him on. And then Casey Crown. Saw Casey. Hey, Casey. And then Andrew, I think, will be joining in a moment. And what I'd love to invite now, and you know, in our fellowship retreats and meetings, we often begin with check-ins, which is a way for us to each presence what's alive for us now, and you know, and then a conversation sense-making conversation will unfold from there. So I would love to invite my amazing colleagues and fellows. Shelley Tegelski is the co-founder of Pandemic of Love, and just an amazing love activist, heart-centered leader, inspiring doer of amazing acts of kindness and service in the world. Casey Crown is a trauma alchemist, feel like I'm going to say heart-centered for everybody. She's a psychotherapist, and just feel like Casey is just this threads the space between like the deepest, most rooted place in the earth and the center of the cosmos. And through her work in healing trauma, working through grief, it's just like a magician. Nicole Chase is a movement, mindfulness, and music guru. Nicole is like a student of everything and has the capacity to take everything she learns and like mulch it into the most beautiful, fertile soil for just so many different modalities of healing, of growth, of transformation. And so that's Nicole. Jackie is our sacred architect, divine designer, and the innkeeper of sacred hospitality for our fellowship. She is an artist from the heart. She is and has her own magic of taking, it's almost like art alchemy, of taking the words and translating it into imagery and visual concepts that encapsulate so much more than the words can. Barnaby Willett is our, he's just like the ally of all humankind. And through his work in our fellowship in developing and translating and bringing new life into this practice called ally work, he has become certainly an ally to me and an ally to all of the fellows. He walks this bridge of the mystical and the mundane, and he's just got an amazing witty sense of humor too. So, and then Andrew Villamil, in addition to being a sound healer, is also a researcher, a PhD student in positive psychology. And again, heart-centered research. Like, we're just like transforming the world through the heart, as Angel mentioned earlier. We think. We don't just think with our head, we know in our hearts. So I'm going to turn it over to the fellows, and we're going to do a round of check-ins and see where we go from here.
I'll begin. So hi, I'm Shelley. This week has been very hard for a lot of us, all of us, the whole world, I imagine. I'm not taking my own self-care advice this week. I've been working around the clock with our volunteers and humanitarian efforts on the ground across 10 different border points along the Polish border. And I feel incredibly proud that we've done things like raise $11 million in a week and, you know, engage 120 volunteers and arrange for convoys and pay for people to get safely to family and friends that may be all across Europe, or send people home back to Africa, or, to the US, or wherever it is that they feel safe in this moment. But then I feel sort of strange about feeling proud, because I'm like, it's just this bizarre kind of feeling of like, I shouldn't even be doing this, and it's like a fury and a frustration with the fact that as civilians, we've been able to do more, our group of people, and it's a large group of several NGOs and several on the ground grassroots organizations that are working together. And we've accomplished more in like a week than many of the large organizations that you would expect to like show up and have it together, So I think a lot about what Valerie Carr wrote about in her book, but also spoke about, and that Van Jones quotes often, that perhaps this, I have to kind of like live in hope, right? I think that she writes that maybe this isn't the darkness of the womb or the tomb, but it's the darkness of the womb. And I guess in my life, I have this philosophy that we, if we're lucky in life, we can find something to hope for. And if we're smart about it, we can learn to live inside that hope. And so I'm really struggling this week to live inside that hope, because every time I see the best in humanity, it's also when I see the worst of humanity. And that really bothers me. So I'm sitting with that. That's my check-in.
I am feeling into a lot of paradox this week as well. And just beyond grateful that people like Shelley exist, that just mobilize without skipping a beat and take action in such efficient and meaningful and loving and supportive ways. So thank you, Shelley, for everything that you're doing. It's such an honor to witness your work and to witness you. And yeah, I think I'm feeling into the heaviness of what's transpiring on the planet. And, like you just said, Shelley, it's like every time you witness the worst of humanity, you witness the best of humanity. And it's the tension between those two paradoxical realities that leave us constantly, trying to kind of find our place and find our balance. And yeah, I think I'm sitting with some similar feelings and noticing these like little waves of hope and optimism that are also coming out of this week, where I wonder, right? There's so many spiritual teachers talking about this kind of being the great turning, right? This time in humanity. And, it's like we're always kind of on the brink of wondering whether or not there's going to be some like catalyst for the ultimate awakening, or if we're going to kind of collapse into ourselves. And I'm just constantly doing that dance. I'm feeling that dance very much this week. And I'm recognizing the choice, right, that I have to direct my attention toward the hope, and to really continue to like embody the intention to show up in a way that contributes to that light frequency energy that moves us in the direction of healing, that moves us toward the great turning and the great transformation that I think we are all capable of, you know, experiencing individually and collectively. So I'm doing my best to engage in my practices this week, and supporting, you know, my clients and community to do the same, and just really grateful to be in this space with each of you, presencing. So yeah, thank you.
It's always so wonderful to be in community with all of my fellows. I always feel so held and seen. And regardless of what is transpiring, regardless of what's going on in the world. And I feel like this space with everyone who's here today is very resonant, and like we're all connected in this kind of resonant, supportive space. So thank you everyone for that. Shelley, thank you for the work that you do. Casey, thank you for that beautiful share and for the work that you do. And all of the fellows, thank you for the work that you do. I feel like I'm in very good company. As has been mentioned by both Shelley and Casey, I feel like this week and the last few days, the last several days have been really heavy because of what's going on in the world. And it's really been landing in a strong way in my body. I've been really feeling the heaviness in my body, the constriction. And it's been really interesting to explore these two kind of polarities that seem to vacillate right now for me. This feeling of contraction and expansion, and this feeling of kind of hopelessness and hope, right? This possibility and excitement, yet also being with everything that is challenging, is difficult, is maybe even terrifying. It's just really interesting to hold all of that and to be with all of that. So I've been really relying on my practices a lot. The last few days I've been having to kind of really ground myself in more practice. And I feel like something that we talk about a lot with each other in the fellowship is the intelligence and the benefit of slowing down so that we can really be with and to let things emerge. And so I've been allowing myself to slow down in ways that I can. And even in my teaching and supporting my students, I have found that I've been really focusing on slowing down and grounding a lot. So those are some of the things that I've been noticing. Another thing that's really arising, that was arising and preparing for being here today, and with this idea of relational sense making. Angel, I love the way that you framed it, by the way, in saying that it's like we're developing another type of intelligence. Maybe even an intelligence that was always there, but to kind of cultivate it, to help it to grow, I think is what we're all really interested in. This relational, this communal sort of intelligence that we're developing feels really exciting. And it makes me think of something that was famously said by Thich Nhat Hanh, that the next Buddha might be a Sangha, right? It might be a community. So that's exciting to me, that we can be a part of that not only we in the fellowship can be a part of that, but that you being here today are a part of that as well, that we can be in this relational space and developing these ways of creating collective intelligence. So I think I'll end there. Thanks everyone for being here with us. And thanks to all of my fellows for being here with me.
I'd love to continue pulling on that thread, Nicole and Casey and Shelley. Through all of this the past week, and really the past 2 years, and the devastation, the disconnect between the successes of bringing knowledge and connection into this world. I can't help but feel a dysregulation between this connection that, you know, the 21st century was going to bring in, was going to usher in. And as I've been thinking about it, and yes, that's a beautiful point, Mari. Intelligence is everywhere. Are we listening? Are we taking all that intelligence in with all our senses? It's a beautiful thought. And a really poignant point to this idea of community. One thing I took heart of during the pandemic, and what I've really seen that's giving me hope, is this system, this dysregulated system that's responding. Just in the last week, we've seen almost every Western country come together to unify, to interconnect, to support. Albeit it would be a lot better given different types of support, that it's just such a complicated system. And one of the things that I kind of kept going through as my science brain goes off and I start thinking about words and terms and what can we do and how can this be and how do people respond to this. But one thing that just kind of keeps hitting me as I witness this reorganization through this dysregulation is really resilience. Anne Masson has done some really, really beautiful work looking at numerous events, traumatic events. And I had to go back recently. I looked up the definition, like what is resilience? Like what is it? And I'm just going to read this definition if that's okay with everyone. But resilience is the capacity of a system, child, family, community, to adapt successfully through multi-system processes to challenges that threaten the function, survival, or development of the system. And for me, reading that, it's something that I am taking to heart, is seeing the response to tragedy, to adversity. We have a beautiful example of how Pandemic of Love and the incredible response of human kindness and compassion and action, tangible action. It's not just words that we hear about, that we read about, that we say, but something that one can do anywhere in the world. And it gives me that sense of hope that I was struggling with. I've been struggling with this. I've been up late at night, just constantly reading through the horrific things happening. But I just wanted to presence this idea of this system, of this world, of this community that has an opportunity to respond, to reorganize, to reconnect through these past few years, and really over this past week. So I really love the concepts that you mentioned, Nicole. It was a beautiful quote about the future Buddha, the community. And that's where I'm at. That's my check-in. Thank you for listening.
I can jump in since Barnaby still looks very deep in contemplation, as usual. Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie. I'm grateful to be here with all of my fellows and with all of you today. I'm always in awe of Shelley and all of the kind of literal magic that I call it, it's magic that she is able to create. I won't go there, but there was a really great quote about like, what is magic that a friend of mine and I were looking at the other day, but so much of what's been on my heart and on my mind with everything that we've been talking about is actually a practice that Casey has brought to our fellowship many times, and that a dear friend of mine who is actually, I think I was telling Barnaby earlier today, is from the Ukraine, still has family in the Ukraine, and on Monday night brought a group of us together in what I would call prayer, yet it wasn't about, whatever God or universe or higher power means to you. It wasn't about a specific religious prayer. Yet she led us through a visualization similar to ones that Casey has led us through, where this woman who still has family in the Ukraine was asking all of us to send love and light to the Russians, to Putin, to the people of the Ukraine. Like, it was so magnanimous and of such big heart for somebody who, I can't even imagine having family members in the Ukraine right now and what she must be feeling. And it resonated with my heart in a way that it wasn't, she was not being performative. It was truly from a place of like, I don't know, this higher self. And it has stuck with me all week. And even in like a millisecond of a moment, taking a pause to presence myself and kind of do a similar exercise of sending love and light to, anyone in suffering right now. And I think it's bolstered allowed my dysregulation to minimize. So I just that's really what's coming up for me right now. And I shared with Barnaby and there was a quote by John O'Donohue that really kind of brought it all together for me. And I can put it in the chat, but basically he said, your identity is not equivalent to your biography. There is a place in you where you have never been wounded, where there's a seamlessness in you, and where there is a confidence and tranquility in you. The intention of prayer and spirituality and love is now and again to visit that inner kind of sanctuary. So thank you all for being present right now so we all may create our own inner sanctuary.
Jackie, I'm having this phrase come up, like a mirror of inner sanctuary, like an architecture of the invisible. And I think about what it means for me to enter that inner sanctuary and find restoration, like Andrew's healing bowls, and also to find the creative imagination, to find inspiration, and that from this like invisible architecture, this invisible sanctuary, that there, from our imagination, that forms can emerge, new structures can emerge in the world, like Buddha as Sangha, or a pandemic of love. And truly the words you spoke, Shelley, exemplify like that we can not just have like emergent consciousness, but emergent forms, even like this Garrison Fellowship or this meeting today, where humans can come together and create new ways to build community and be there for people when even the most powerful governments and institutions seem to fail. And maybe maybe Casey, as you were speaking to being in this time of things falling apart, but also things emerging, just in the way that in cryptocurrencies are an example of like ways for people to try and do something new with money. What are all the other ways that we can do new things, have new structures? And so to me that's what that word hope is for me, that hope for emergent consciousness and emergent expressions and forms of that consciousness.
I keep being reminded of our first fellowship retreat as we were co-creating what this fellowship would be through an emergent process of dreaming and visioning and coming to these themes of a sanctuary, an incubator for creative collaborations, and a beacon. And this, when you're talking, when everybody, as through everybody's sharing, this concept of sort of building the invisible architecture of of the self, of what's yet to come into form in consciousness, and it's like we're in this goo. I was saying earlier, like we're in this goo. There's a lot of talk about being in the liminal space, and the liminal space of the caterpillar is literally like a goo, and it feels to me, and I'm having some very physical, personal physical experiences of this. And so it's like really being brought home to my body in terms of some physical pain and disintegration that I'm experiencing that feels very much like a microcosm of like what I'm, the like a metaphor for what I'm experiencing in like the outpicturing of the world. And so I love this image of like creating the architecture of the invisible, and really leaning into the space of sanctuary and rest when we can, and then coming together in this creative incubator for conscious collaboration. I think I just changed the words. And like allowing that space for emergent consciousness, and then going out into our communities, into our work, our worlds as a beacon. And I think that's what each of you and us, that's what we do through this fellowship. And that's what we all can do. Everybody, if you're sitting on this, with us right now, if you're listening to this recording, you're now part of the fellowship. So you're part of Moas. And so it's like, we take this, we're sort of in this, we had that sanctuary, that sound bath sanctuary. We're creating this cocoon, this nest for ourselves, so that we can have these, space for these creative emergent conversations. And what we'd love to do is invite you into that through some breakout room space. And we're going to try a little bit of an experiment, which is oftentimes, if you've been in a Zoom, you get sent to a breakout room, and you just kind of like sent to a room, and that's the room you're in. And we're actually going to give you a choice. I'm thinking two things at the same time. So I'm looking at the number of people, and the invitation in the breakout rooms is we're going to have 3 rooms. This is going to be a surprise to the fellows too. We're going to have 3 rooms. So they're going to be a little larger than maybe like, pairing up or a trio where, so if you want to go and just listen, that's fine too. If you want to go and just engage in the chat, that's great. If you want to be part of the conversation and dialogue, we'll have 2 fellows in each room. We'll do, Shelley, I'm curious about this, the gap between empathy and action, fear and action.
Well, I mean, in our group, we talked about, I raised the question of, without judgment, really more out of curiosity, like what keeps people at the precipice? What keeps people from, especially individuals who really have invested a great deal of time in doing inner work, doing therapy, et cetera, from actually doing more, like in the real world, in the outer world, outside of their bodies and their minds. And so that kind of, started this really interesting thread of conversation. And here, oh, sorry, that was like a direct, I was about to read a direct message that came in from somebody in our group, but I'd actually really love to, sorry to put you on the spot, Joy, but if you're interested in being vulnerable and sharing with the group, I think that, Your statements were really profound. And, you know, they were along the lines of the fact that really when we're coming into a lot of these spaces, there's one demographic that's usually missing. Because we talked a lot about tend and befriend and women's tendencies to, like, you know, seek community, et cetera, et cetera. And sort of that led us down that rabbit hole. And, but yet that demographic is the demographic that really without consent are the ones with the power that are getting us into this mess.
How can we reclaim power as the connection to our heart and our humanity, as the true definition of power? As Keith wrote in the chat, presencing as the purpose of a meeting rather than being driven by an agenda that you have to push through. And what would it take to get those souls to the table, to the conversation? It's like you've just flipped the narrative in, you know, it's like there's this narrative that, you know, oh, who's not at the table, and we need to bring XYZ people to the table, right? The table of power. But what, it's the other way. Like, what if this is the table of power? This is not the table, this is the circle of power. And what would it take to get those souls to this table?
Joy, I'm really appreciating your share. Thank you. Thanks for bringing her in, Shelley.
Told you.
I didn't doubt you for a second. Yeah, I mean, you really have me sitting with such important questions around power right now, and particularly as a trauma therapist myself, you know, like what is the nature of the injury where the coping strategy is all about grabbing for a false sense of power, is all about abusing power to hold that position of power, right? What is the injury? What is the nature of that injury, right? And how do we get to the core of that injury that continues to perpetuate harm, right? As opposed to, right, just constantly attending to the injuries that are perpetrated upon others as a result of that great injury, right? So I'm just really, you have me kind of reeling in this moment with curiosity around that. And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Andrew, there's a question for you in the chat. What did you call it? The executive sub-level that is destabilized?
So in our group, we touched on family systems theory, as we touched on systems in general. And one of the things that has emerged from work in this concept of family systems theory is the idea that, for example, if a child is acting out, previously it was the child's fault. You know, we're viewed as the disruptor. What family systems really keys in on is the fact that a family is a system. And when a system becomes dysregulated, more often than not, it's because of a disruption in the executive subsystem, usually the caregivers, parental figures, the decision makers, the prefrontal cortex of a family, if you really want to think about it, a brain. And so what happens really is when this disruption occurs, when the system gets dysregulated, one of the strategies to help regulate itself is to provide resources to this executive subsystem, these parental figures, these caregivers, so that the adults can work through this, mend and heal as a way of really improving resources in the future, of working through, other events that occur down the line. And so, yes, the executive subsystem is referred to as that, to answer the question.
I'm noticing the time. I'm noticing Joyce's comment, making sure we have a world where the adults have the resources they need and the children have the support to not need power defenses might help make a change. Yeah. So we'll compile all these chat notes, and we're gonna, we'll close with Nicole. We'll do a movement practice that can be a practice for transitioning off Zoom into the 3D world. Before I turn it to Nicole, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And it feels a bit as though we stepped in the middle of a conversation and we're leaving still in the middle of the conversation. And that's kind of how all of our fellowship sessions kind of feel like. It was, and I'm so curious, like I wish I could have been in all 3 breakout rooms and I was in none of them. So it's like we sort of fractalized and then we reconstellated, and you're going to go back into, we're each going to go back into our communities, our worlds, our homes, our spaces. I always like to connect with something living, whether it's my child, if she's here, or one of my dogs, or even just stepping outside and seeing a plant, if I can. That's one of my transition practices. This community is here. Our next forum's on March 26th. And we hope that you'll join us. That's a Saturday. And we'll have some different fellows, some of the same fellows. And just Monique will probably put lots of notes in the chat about upcoming fellowships event and fellowship events. And then we will be emailing you with the recording and the notes and all sorts of things like that. So, I'm going to pass it to Nicole.
May I, before you pass it to Nicole, just magnify, amplify the importance of a nuanced conception of power. Our default tends to be power over, official authority, but we also have power to, power with, power for. And we need to make sure that we are maximizing our agency and efficacy by tending to those other sources of power to make change, transformative change. Power to, power for, power with. Let's get busy with it, y'all. We don't have to ask anybody's permission for it either.
And it's free to share.
Exactly, which is what power with is. Knowing that we may not be able to do it by ourselves. So we should be constantly scanning and discerning where are the places that I have power to, coming from within my own personal self attributes. Power to, power for, power with, connecting with others. And then last but not least is power over, which is the raggedy part that most of us don't have access to. So let's not say, oh, woe is me. Work the other three.
Thank you so much.
Sure enough.
Thank you so much for that. In many ways, I feel like that's the perfect segue to embody all of that. The question that that arose even before that beautiful share, which, gosh, just adds so many, so much more meaning to what I'm going to say now. So thank you so much. Where is the true power? Where is the true power? How can we shine a light on that? How can we become that collectively? And how can we collectively become a beacon of hope? How can we really tap into and embody this power to, with, and for? So with that in mind, we'll do something very brief, just in transition. You can stay seated or you can stand up. And what I'd first like you to do is to feel your feet on the ground, to really stand or ground into a source, some source of power. What feels powerful to you in this moment? It might be something that arose for you in our conversation here today. It might be something that is coming to you from outside of this particular conversation. And as you ground into or stand in that power, so I invite you to find the center of that power. So all of these, life tends to take us in different directions. And especially right now, where things feel uncertain and really kind of volatile, we tend to be taken off balance, off center. So in the spirit of that, just start to sway from side to side a little bit. And try to find in this subtle little movement where that central point is. It'll start to become kind of clear with just a simple dynamic movement. And then after a few times of swaying back and forth, allow yourself to come to that central point in a way that feels a bit relaxed and grounded, yet with ease. And lastly, I invite you to, in this position, this grounded position where you feel empowered, it's like to not only feel it in the front side of your body, but can you also feel it in the back side of your body? Can you feel it through every cell? And you feel it the inner edge of your legs, outer edge of your legs, inner edge of your arms, just everywhere. Like, how can you embody even more that sense of power with, to, for? And just spend another moment here, maybe another breath, to really let that seep in. And my wish is that we may take this with us, that we may all be a beacon of hope for this world, for this troubled world, that we may be, in fact, becoming the Buddha, the Sangha of the Buddha that this great turning is bringing about. Thank you all so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.